what's up everyone? Tangy with the Airgun podcast here, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Diana Chaser. Now this gun has a lot of really cool features, and we're going to cover that here later in the video, but just a couple things to note. First of all, this is a CO2 pellet gun, and we're going to be reviewing this one, which is in 177 today, so 17 caliber. And I'll explain why we're reviewing a CO2 pellet rifle or pistol, depending on the version you have, on a primarily PCP channel. So we'll get to that in just a bit. But a few really cool features of the gun. One comes with a moderator that can thread onto the pistol barrel, which I have on right now, or the rifle barrel, which is longer, and that is being worked on by a friend right now. Got some cool custom stuff coming for it. The barrel band that this comes with, specifically for the rifle barrel, the longer barrel, has a rear sight on it, and then just on the bottom has a little section of a Picatinny mount, so you can put a bipod or a light or laser, whatever you want on there. So I decided to put a bipod on there because this is my very close range, very small game testing rifle or carbine. It's really cool because it comes with the magazine as well as a single shot tray. So in 17 caliber, this is a 9-shot rotary magazine, and 22, I believe it's a 7-shot magazine. But with 8.4 grain JSP pellets, I'm doing about 610 feet per second with this. So right around 6 or 7 foot-pounds of energy with some fresh CO2 in here. And if you have experience with CO2 guns, you know that as the cartridge becomes depleted, then your velocity drops off, and then eventually you're shooting nothing. But this thing is super sweet. So I'll get to my favorite features. One, you can convert it from just a pistol to a carbine, and you can have the rifle barrel on just the pistol, or you can have the pistol barrel like I have on the carbine setup. And let's check this out. So push my bipod up. This little screw on the bottom, you undo this bad boy right here. And then you can take off your stock extension. And then a cool little feature is extra storage for a spare CO2 cartridge. And that is really nifty because if you're ever shooting CO2 guns and you're out in the field or wherever, somewhere you just didn't bring a spare, and you're like, dang it man, I just want to keep on shooting. Well, now you have a spare cartridge. And I'm getting about 50 shots per fill with the cartridge. So anyway, now you have your regular pistol, what this is called. So anyway, now you take this, which goes onto just the pistol grip. Again, your screw goes back in. You still have that storage there. And you have a nice little setup. Now, my bipod is still on, obviously, and then you've seen the length without the moderator. But we'll do this with the pistol grip just to give you guys a look. A lot of different setups you can have for this gun. So if the bipod's not your style, that's fine. You don't have to have one. This little threaded portion on the barrels, both the pistol and the rifle barrel, there's an end cap that you can screw on to protect the threads. And I removed the rear sight that goes on this back section with the pistol barrel, because you don't want your front sight and your rear sight this close. So this is part of the barrel band, like I mentioned, and this would then have the front sight on the rifle barrel out here. So it would be kind of the same view as this being back here, but that's not super relevant. Anyway, super cool gun, and magazine works pretty well. Its bolt is on the left side, which I kind of like that, because if you're doing quick shots, if you're a right-handed shooter, which I am, then you can shoot, cock it, shoot, cock it, shoot, without ever removing this hand from the trigger or the grip, and that's really nifty. Let's see. So just to give you a look, again, with my setup that I have on here, I have the Leaper's Bug Buster scope with my Picatinny adapter that I put on top. This is a sweet little setup for me. It works very well. My DIY scope cam for under 25 bucks goes here, moderator, and this really does help a lot, specifically with this shorter pistol barrel. So if you're going to be shooting it, you want it backyard friendly, I would definitely keep this moderator on there. And more quiet is never a bad thing. So even if you want to use it on the longer barrel as well, you can't go wrong there. So I pretty much always just keep this on, unless I'm storing it in my backpack or carrying it with me. I break it down so it's a little bit shorter. But it's super easy setup, takedown. I'll show you guys how to swap out the barrel here in a bit, but it's just a few little set screws and it's smooth as butter. Throw this guy back on once we take that off. And now we're back to our carbine version. Put that screw in the bottom, hold the stock nice and tight. So this thing is sweet. Let's get a little bit of some scope cam footage, show you guys what it's doing. And again, if you know anything about CO2 guns, this is not going to perform as well as a pre-charged pneumatic. But the reason I am reviewing this CO2 gun on this channel is because this specific gun right here, whether it's in the pistol or the carbine setup, is going to give you a pretty good idea of what it's like to shoot a PCP. But you can expect more power, more accuracy, and a little bit higher quality when it comes to shooting a pre-charged pneumatic rather than a CO2 gun. But still, nonetheless, a really cool setup, lots of really cool features here. I'm pretty stoked on it. This is actually technically my second CO2 gun, but my first one that I have purchased that wasn't handed down to me, and it's also the one with the most features, and it's a lot higher quality than the hand-me-down that I had. Anyway, let's get this thing outside, shoot some groups. We're gonna go about 10 to 12 yards with this, any further, and it's gonna look like shotgun spray. So let's check it out. Alright guys, this is going to be a good time to show you how the end cap situation works when you're removing the CO2. So, I'm going to fire this down all the way. Okay, it's pretty much out of CO2 right now. Okay, so it's out. So now, the end cap comes off. So there's this little piece in the front. And if you have to, you can insert it into the holes to twist to loosen the end cap. This one I didn't need to do that because you don't have to tighten this down super tight. But the end cap comes off, which is also the piercing cap. And then just inside here, you can see there is a CO2 cartridge in there. So that's always a good thing that you can tell. So now we're just going to take this screw, because it doesn't just fall out. I'm going to take this little screw, go right into the side, and kind of push it out. So always point it in a safe direction, that way you don't light someone up with the CO2 cartridge, even though that'd be kind of tight. We're going to take our brand new CO2 cartridge and slide this guy in there. And I have Pellet gun oil on the end of this, so it's basically just a little oil you put on here to keep it from leaking, so it seals it pretty good. But anyway, it goes right on the end, and then you shouldn't have any issues with leaks. So now this goes right back in. Finger tighten it as much as you can. And once it starts to get too tight, that's when you take this little screw again, go right into the side, and tighten it. Now if you have the bipod on, then the holes might line up to where you can't screw this in all the way, and that's okay. So you just gotta mule grip it. I just heard the CO2 go, so it's going in right now. It is filling up. I'm going to give it one more twist for good measure. See if I can't get any more. So if I can keep finger tightening it, then I know I could probably go a little bit tighter. Boom. And that should be good. So now new CO2's in. I always like to cock it, fire it just to make sure, and that is some fresh CO2. So let's check out these groups. Alright guys, don't mind my crazy neighbors. They just yell at their children all day long. And then the kids cry, and you know how that goes. So we're going right for this black dot. That's where we're going to aim for our group. And again, we're at 10 yards here, so there's 1. 2. 5. Here we go. I pulled that one a little bit. Let's go 6 just in case. Boom. So there's a 5-shot group. And now we're going to move up to our little prairie dog friend here and see if we can get a shot on some vitals. Because if you're going to be doing any kind of pest control with this thing, again, I wouldn't recommend really any further than 15 yards, at least with the 177. You want to make sure it'll hit where we're going. So there's a little prairie dog. It's a little target I split in half, and it goes right up there. So let's see if we can't get a headshot on this guy or a vitals shot. So we're going to go a full magazine on this and see how it does with all 9 shots. Oh for 2. There's a hit. 2. 3. 'Ooh, just passed. Let's go for some vitals real quick. That was an arm shot, not vitals. Alright, that's our full magazine. Let's go check it out. Alright guys, so first we'll check out our group, 6-shot group. Really not bad. That is probably like a 1/4 inch group. That brings it out to maybe, a 1/2 inch group still, which is pretty good. 10 yards again. So let's take a look here. We shot 9 shots at this little guy, and you can see where each one hit. Now it was going a little bit to the left, so if I had this zeroed in a little bit better, could have been better results. But we got 3 shots on target on the head, 3 shots on target just by the arm. Probably these 2 right here would have been lethal. This one to the left, not so much. So no go. Probably would have done it. Would have done it for sure. So that's all 9 shots. A 6-shot group here. So not too bad for 10 yards. It'll get the job done. So to remove the barrel, so you have these little screws here. So you find the appropriately sized Allen key. This one's a little bent, but you just loosen these. The one in the front and the one in the back, I loosen first, just barely. They're not super necessary because the middle one is the one that's holding it in there primarily. So that one, nice and loose. Let's see if that was enough. Bada boom. And then your barrel should slide out just like that. And I'm not going to pull it completely off, but just so you guys can see, it's got these little O-rings here to help seal it. That center piece right there, that is where the primary screw is holding, and then these other two little pieces right here, or those little indents, you can see that's the other screws. So as long as you got that middle one in pretty tight, you should be good. And then it slides just back into place. Again, rifle barrel or the pistol barrel, doesn't matter. Nice and flush here in the breech. Make sure it's nice and centered up, and then you just tighten those little screws back down. To be honest though, I really like the look of this little setup without the scope on top. I don't know why, just really like it, but it's a pretty sweet little thing. It's very light, pretty well balanced. Like I said, it's super short, especially in the carbine configuration. It shoulders really well, but it's super duper light composite material. So, and that all black, you can't go wrong with that. Okay guys, so a couple takeaways from this review here. Remember, this accuracy test was done with the pistol barrel, so a very short barrel. It's just over 8 inches long from here to the very end, so not a super long barrel. So when you have the longer barrel on this rifle, you should be getting more accuracy and more power, so keep that in mind. And also, on a different note, accuracy is very important, and so is knockdown power if you're going to be using this for pest control. If you're just plinking with this, who cares? Freaking shoot it. If you're going to be doing any kind of pest control, whether it's mice, rats, birds, squirrels, whatever pest you're going after, then make sure that you have the numbers on this and that you're shooting the most accurate pellet that your gun is liking. Just to touch on this one more time, if you're looking into getting into a pre-charged pneumatic air rifle, or you're looking into purchasing a PCP, you don't want to spend the money up front. Give this thing a go, because it has a lot of the features, and it's going to give you a pretty good idea of what it's like to shoot a PCP compared to a break barrel where you're cocking the barrel, loading the pellet, snapping it back into place, or your pump action where you have to pump X amount of times. This is the bolt action, magazine fed, and it just gives you a good idea of what it's like to shoot a PCP without breaking the bank, if you will. But just know that if you enjoy shooting this gun at all, then you will love even more shooting a PCP, because you don't deal with the finicky CO2 stuff when it comes to warm weather versus cold weather. You get a lot more consistency, a lot more power, and a lot more accuracy out of a pre-charged pneumatic. Alright guys, so one final thing I wanted to touch on with this review is the fact that this gun is in .177 caliber. So the reason why that's important is because skirt damage is a lot more common and a lot more likely on the smaller caliber pellets. So that plays a big role in your accuracy. So if you have some skirt damage on a pellet, that's where you can get flyers and things like that. So it's not always the gun's fault, or any kind of mechanical issues with the gun, or things that we would typically associate with the gun. It could be the pellets themselves. So if you're just plinking around in the backyard or wherever and you're just shooting targets, you don't really have to be super concerned about the fact that your skirts on your pellets might have some damage on them. But if you are shooting for hunting or pesting purposes, that is something to keep in mind, because you want the most accurate shot when it comes to shooting a living creature, something that you're going to be dispatching or taking the life of. So keep that in mind when you're choosing your next rifle or airgun caliber. I always typically like to go a little bit bigger, because typically the heavier the pellet, the bigger the pellet, the more outside variables aren't going to affect it, or they'll have less of an effect on it. Whereas an 8.4 grain 17 caliber pellet with a damaged skirt, you're going to see a lot of accuracy issues, even at short ranges like 10 yards, based on things like that. So keep that in mind. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this and enjoyed the video, please comment below, let me know. Follow me on Instagram, check out the Airgun podcast for more content, and we'll see you guys next time.